Hello, my name is Natalie, and this is our Garfinkeling presentation. So today, there are many social norms that we follow on a daily basis without even knowing in our world. One in particular is the practice of not sitting directly next to somebody in a public space. For our experiment, we as a group chose to examine how sitting right next to someone in a public space affects how society will view these social norms. We conducted this experiment 4 times to gain a better sense of how breaking norms can violate the social behaviors that we as a society view as standard practices.
Okay, and with what Natalie said, I'm Katie. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the social norm we broke and how we went about completing this experiment. So the social norm we decided to break is when you're in a shared space, such as a dining hall. In our case, we used the one at Towers. You should not sit directly next to a stranger unless there's absolutely nowhere else to sit or you ask before. So our method of testing this out was all 4 of us went to the dining hall at Towers, and we each took a turn sitting at a table that was occupied by one stranger. We then sat and ate with the stranger in silence, and we recorded their reactions to it. And our hypothesis for this was, 1, if a stranger approaches another stranger in a public dining hall with plenty of other seating options, the stranger will reject the interaction via verbal non-communication. Our second hypothesis was the same. If a stranger approaches another stranger in a public dining hall with plenty of other seating options, then the stranger approach will reject the interaction via nonverbal communication. So pretty much we just wanted to test this out, and we hypothesized for both that it would be rejected either way just because it is such a strong social norm. But the difference was just whether it be via verbal communication or via nonverbal communication.
Hi, I'm CJ, and I'm going to be covering the results. So our results were kind of all over the place. My experience was that the 2 females that I approached were very uncomfortable in the situation, but the one female asked, like, "What are you doing? Can I help you?" in a very uncomfortable way, like you didn't want me to be there. Katie's experience, hers just kind of sat there in silence. They really didn't talk. They just kind of shared a quiet little awkward laugh at the end of it, but it was still overall an uncomfortable situation. Natalie's experience, she approached him and they moved closer, and the subject actually walked away, actually got out of the situation because it was that uncomfortable for him to be in. In Elle's situation, it was very different in that the person she was interacting with didn't have any reaction to it at all. Actually thought it was quite normal, and nothing really affected it. It was just, they went on with their day just like that.
My name's Elle, and I'll be discussing our analysis. Our hypotheses were ultimately proven and expanded upon through our experiments. We initially hypothesized that if approached by a stranger in a generally non-crowded space, the person being approached would reject the interaction via verbal or nonverbal communication. In each of our scenarios, the person who was approached reacted in a way to suggest that they were not open to the interaction and they were uncomfortable with the social norm that was broken. Through our Garfinkeling experiment, we witnessed many of our course concepts in action. Before, we noticed that in a dining hall, it is very common for individuals to sit alone, and when looking for a seat, it's widely accepted that sitting across from a stranger is not normal. From class, we understand that this is an implicit rule because while it's not explicitly stated in this context, this behavior is not preferred and is perceived as strange. During the experiments, the course concept of nonverbal communication and the axiom, "you cannot not communicate," were clearly shown in each example. In my case, it's still unclear of the exact reasoning behind why the person did not interact, but it may have been because of the noise, such as the headphones she was wearing, that prevented her from receiving the message.
Okay, as our experiment and results have proven, invading the personal space of others is ultimately deemed strange, uncommon, and can be potentially threatening to our society. Perhaps the question that this has raised was, have social encounters like the one we performed in our experiment normal and common like they've always been for many years, or have over time have they formed into this social norm that we seem as normal today? these are just some of the questions that can be studied in the future in communication research papers. Thank you.